in your great unread work, Desire and Deception.
Oh, is that a plug?
You seem to hint that Father Feeney was really only following in the church footsteps on the Ressourcement in proclaiming as he did that there was no salvation outside of the church. Like the honest child, he said the right thing to the wrong people and was sadly punished for it. But if this is the case, what should we think about the vast majority of those theologians in the Ressourcement movement? It seems obvious that if they truly go back to the sources, as their name suggests, they would see the truth as plainly as Father Feeney did. So one wonders whether we should suspect willful ignorance or ill will.
Well, that's a very good question, and the answer is I don't have an answer for it, because I hate dumping everybody in under one thing. I mean, obviously, in principle, I have to agree, in the sense that as any number of, shall we say, impartial observers have pointed out, what Father Feeney said was what the vast majority of the church fathers said in concert. But I would hesitate to pass judgment on the whole Ressourcement as a group, because it was so diverse. And I'm sure that for anything I said, you'd be able to find an exception to prove me wrong.
Is it an official group with official members, or just
it was
very loose and broad?
Yeah, it was like romanticism. You know, who's a romantic? Well, depending on how you feel, everybody you like or everybody you don't like. It was that group of Jesuits and Dominicans in the early part of the 20th century who, at a time when Catholic philosophy was seen as being restricted to medieval scholasticism, and particularly Thomism alone, as opposed to the other scholastic schools, they said, well, let's have a look at the church fathers, whom we've been ignoring. And so they did. And that was what the Ressourcement, the return to the sources, came from. Unfortunately, a lot of them used that simply as a means of discounting the scholastics, and particularly St. Thomas. And that, of course, was not a good thing to do. But that's certainly not how Father Feeney used it. And the truth of the matter is, you can see, if you compare the two, how the scholastics really did develop out of the church fathers. But I do think they were quite right in that we have to stay closely connected to the fathers, just as I think it's important to keep all of the schools of scholasticism, not just Thomism, in mind. The reason I say this is partly because one of the witnesses to Catholic truth is its sheer antiquity. The fact that you can trace it all the way back to the time of our Lord. That's one thing. Yeah. That's something Protestants don't have. And many a Protestant has been made by studying the church fathers. Newman is a good example. But, having said that...
Many a Protestant has been made?
Many a Protestant has been converted to Catholicism by studying the church fathers.
I see.
Contrary-wise, however, I think that one of the problems with ignoring all the other scholastic schools and focusing only on Thomism is that Thomism's defects are preserved as well as its virtues. You see, these different schools, they all had defects, they all had virtues, and they tended to act as correctives on each other. So, for instance, the Thomists denied the Immaculate Conception for a good 300 years, 400 years, whereas the followers of Duns Scotus, the Scotists, kept up the cheer for it. And in fact, if you read Dom Guéranger's piece on the Immaculate Conception, he goes into this big panegyric beginning, "All hail Duns Scotus," okay. Which, you know, in some quarters is a dirty name. Not in mine, because his feast day is my birthday.
Why would he be a dirty name?
Because he wasn't a Thomist.
Oh.
I mean, there are some people for whom Thomism and Catholicism are interchangeable. And if you're not Thomist, you're not Catholic. If you are Catholic, then you're a Thomist. Where that would have left Mortimer Adler, who for most of his years was a Jewish Thomist, I don't know. But mind you, he died and became a Catholic before he died. So,
okay,
I'm happy for him, but it ruins the use of it in this area.